the VA Disability Back Pain Bible. I want this to be your ultimate resource if you have back pain from in the military service and trying to get rated for that VA disability claim, whether you're struggling to get rated, whether you're denied, or if this is your initial claim, it doesn't matter. I want this to be your ultimate video that you need to get rated. I'm Jordan Anderson, VA Claims Academy. Fellow vets, I am actually refilming my entire premium course. For those of you, by the way, who have already clicked the first link in the description and are already course members, you're going to get a complimentary upgrade. I just was inspired today to give you a taste of kind of the new style of what we're teaching. So it'll be a little bit longer of a video, but I hope you get some value out of this. So if you're ready, let's get started. Today, we're going to be talking about a number of topics that's going to save you a lot of time, effort, and ideally cash as well. We're going to talk about the different types of back pain, the difference between, low back pain, upper back pain, or neck pain. We're going to talk about how to get service connected effectively and what the do's and don'ts are and common misconceptions there to steer away from. We're also going to cover the hidden sort of benefits VA disability wise of having things like neuropathy, radiculopathy, sciatica. These are new terms. That just means, nerve pain, shooting, tingling, numbness down the legs. We're going to talk about that as well. I'm going to make sure that you are ready and equipped, confident, heading into your compensation and pension exam, the most important part of the entire claim. And we'll also briefly touch on the most common secondary claims so that when you do win your back VA rating, you can start building a high value claim around that. All right, let's get into it. Now, what I'm about to reveal for you here on this next slide is imperative for you to know because it's going to reveal everything that is relevant for how your back is going to be rated by the VA. So anything that's not on this next slide essentially doesn't matter as far as your back specifically. Now we're going to get into add-ons for back in a little bit, but for right now, laser focused surgical strike, this is how your back is going to be rated. Now, there is 100% VA rating for your back. However, they're saying that your entire spine, including the neck, has to be frozen in an unfavorable position. So you're in a bad spot in this case. It's very rare. So we'll move on to the 50% threshold, and I'll tell you what the targeted sweet spot is for a lot of vets coming up here soon. 50%, entire thoracolumbar spine frozen in an unfavorable position. Sounds very familiar, almost sounds identical to the top one. But again, the 100% is the entire spine. The 50% is the entire thoracolumbar spine. What does that mean? Basically, the top one, if 100%, has to be the neck included, meaning your entire spine. The thoracolumbar spine is essentially all the way up to your shoulders, right? So your back all the way up to your shoulders, not including the neck. Again, pretty rare, but here we go. This is the sweet spot, the 40% threshold for the vast majority of veterans who have to complain about back pain. This is typically the zone. Now, I'm going to get into what this means, and I'll give you a picture, a visual on the next slide. But let's just read this first. Flexion measures 30 degrees or less. So flexion, we talk about flexion versus extension. This is going to be important, especially as we get into the C&P exam prep a little bit later. But just note that flexion typically is anything that puts you into the fetal position. So almost anything that puts you into that fetal position is considered flexion, whereas extension would be the opposite, okay? Or entire thoracolumbar spine is frozen, but in a favorable position. So maybe it's frozen, but you're upright, you can't move. Maybe you have all your fused discs. That would also be 40%. Again, that is typically the target for veterans who are experiencing back pain. So if you are sitting there with a back rating right now saying, Jordan, yeah, but I got 20% for back, I got 10% for back, and it bugs me, on a daily basis, you may want to be targeting that 40% if this matches you more on the next slide. Now, we're missing 30% here because there is a 30% rating in regards to spine. However, that is for your cervical spine in particular. So they're talking about neck. So if you have less than 30% range of motion on neck, that's when you can get that 30% rating. But back to back here, 20%. Flexion measures more than 30%, but not more than 60. I'm sorry, I said 30%. Flexion measures more than 30 degrees, but not more than 60 degrees. So again, forward bend towards your toes, between 30 and 60 degrees. That's at 20%. We're winding down here now with a 10% rating. It means more than 60 degrees, but less than 90 degrees. 90 degrees, obviously, you would be parallel with the floor. That's how far you can bend. Pretty much you can bend down and touch your toes all the way. And 0 is anything more than 90 degrees. Now, you'll notice that at the compensation and pension exam, if you've already been, or you'll notice here on this diagram that, by the way, these are the things that they make you do when they examine you. These are the things they make you do when they examine you. There's more than just the forward bend. You'll notice right here, 30 degrees this other side, that's a back bend, that's extension. You're gonna get measured how far you can extend. There's a side bend. They're gonna measure your what's called lateral flexion on both sides. There's also a rotation, so how much can you rotate on that spine? Now, how important actually are these extra measurements? Well, here, let's check again, right? You go straight to the source. We can tell that on the second line of the 20%, the 10%, and the 0% rating criteria, there's this little sentence right here, combined ROM, combined range of motion, combined range of motion. So when it says combined range of motion of 120 degrees or less, between 125 and 240 or more, this is what it means. That means they're going to take, let's say you get 10% on extension, you get 30% on flexion, you get 20% on lateral flexion, you get something on rotation as well. They're going to add all of those up, and that's when those combined range of motion degrees come into play. Again, pretty rare, so you mainly want to focus again on that 40% target. If you're someone who has back pain where it's significant, where you're seeking help, a lot of times 40% is the correct target for veterans. Okay, now that's out of the way, let's move on. Okay, well that's all well and good. Now we know how the back is rated, and almost equally as importantly, we know how it's not rated, right? So we know what is relevant for how much percentage you're going to get for your back. But what does that matter if the VA can't even be convinced that it's connected to your service? That's what we're going to tackle right now. And this is the reason most vets get nothing at all for their back pain. So, some service connection do's and don'ts. A couple of things to speak on here. Number one, there's a common misconceptions that I see with vets when I speak to them, that they go on and on about how the VA has x-rayed them, they're acknowledging that their back is injured. Look, I have all these treatment records from the VA. Clearly my back is injured. Why aren't I getting paid disability? Well, it's not a matter of having a disability. A lot of you can even check your decision letters right now, and they'll even acknowledge you have been diagnosed with a disability. However, your service connection is denied. So, a couple of things here to note. Number one, whenever you have a long period of time between your back injury and claiming it, so let's say you've been out of the service for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, is it possible for you to win your back rating and get service connected? It is absolutely possible. However, whenever you have gotten older during that time, the VA almost always is going to try to tell you, you know what, yeah, we see, hey, maybe you were jumping out of airplanes during service 30 years ago, but you've gotten a lot older now. What if this is just the normal, natural progression? So if this is you, if this has been a long time since you've been injured for back and now you're just now setting the record straight, you need to tell the VA that this back has aggravated beyond what's called the normal rate of progression. That's going to be the key word that can save your skin for the VA telling you, hey, you're just getting old, buddy. This would be especially valuable if you can get your doctor, your treating doctor, to write that for you. So a Nexus Letter is something that I would highly recommend for those of you out of the service for decades. What that is, if you haven't been familiar, I'll touch on it just briefly. A Nexus Letter is a letter from your doctor saying that it's at least as likely as not, in this case, that your back is connected to your service. So what do you do if how do you get your hands on a Nexus Letter? What if your doctors aren't willing to sign one for you? What if you only go to VA doctors and they aren't willing to help you out? There's a couple of options here. Getting a Nexus Letter could be oftentimes the strongest way to get service connected, especially if you were denied in the past, and especially when combined with a personal statement. More on that later. However, if your doctors aren't willing to sign even a Nexus Letter template for you, for example, there's a couple of things you can do. Number one, you can pay for a Nexus Letter at a Nexus Letter service, but I would caution you in a couple of ways. Number one, I wouldn't go out of your state for a Nexus Letter service a lot of times because you can honestly get flagged at the VA in terms of they think that you're seeing this doctor for the very first time. It doesn't look like they are very familiar with your treatment, and they can lower the credibility of that Nexus Letter. So sometimes it's a waste of cash. So I would go within your state if you're going to pay for a doctor to sign a Nexus Letter for you. The other thing that you could do, I'll leave a link for you in the description below, should be the second link. Go ahead and check out freenexusletters.com. It's launching very soon. It should be up by the time you're seeing this. And essentially you're going to be able to get an educational pamphlet along with a generic Nexus Letter template so that you can make it super easy on your doctors to let them know, hey, you can just, edit this and sign it. You don't have to take 40 minutes. And plus, here are the things that you can actually do to where you don't get in trouble. Oftentimes putting the doctor at ease and letting them know that they're not going to get called in next week and get in trouble for their opinion is enough to let them help you out. Now, not all of you may need a Nexus Letter. Here's a couple of instances. If you're currently transitioning from active duty, let's say, and you found my channel, first of all, congrats to you. I know that, vets helped me out here by saying, yes, you're doing the smart thing. You can even talk to them in the comments. They had wished that they had known all of this while in. It would be so much easier. So if you're currently transitioning from active duty, just go ahead and log in to MHS Genesis and make sure that your back pain is documented, meaning diagnosed officially. It's already implicitly service connected. If so, you don't even have to worry about a Nexus Letter. Well done. You will want to write personal statements, however, and this goes for my vets as well. Anytime you're claiming something for the VA, any condition, in my opinion, it is smart to write a personal statement. This could be on Form 4138, a personal statement for each and every condition. Now, this is something that we specialize in here at VA Claims Academy. I write custom personal statement drafts, templates that essentially you edit and you make sure it's good. But these are serving as examples, templates for you to be able to use so that you can properly word your statements to the VA, and it can make all the difference. For more information on that, definitely click the first link in the description. Now, there are a couple of MOSs, there's a couple of jobs that if you were doing this in the military, you could actually get an edge as far as getting service connected by the VA. I'm talking about if you were air assault, rappelling out of helicopters, if you were airborne, jumping out of planes, taking bad landings. The VA, surprisingly enough, but good on them, they acknowledge, hey, you know what? I realize that a lot of you folks are very tough, right? You're not going to the doctor. You're taking that bad landing, you're hurting yourself, and you're getting right back up. Or you're doing the road marches, the ruck marches, you're hurting yourself, and you're pressing on. In recent times, the VA has done a pretty good job of having the common sense, the wherewithal to acknowledge, hey, if you're these positions, if you were these jobs, it kind of makes sense how you wouldn't have back pain in your service record, okay? So a couple other things, infantry, if you were heavy weapon systems, any job where it makes, hey, you can injure your back doing just your daily job. This is something to really bring up and harp on in your personal statements, as well as at the CNP exam if you don't have, especially if you don't have a Nexus Letter, but if you don't have a diagnosis in service or if it's just been a long period of time. that could help you a lot. So make sure you leverage that. And that's, again, key to use your voice with your personal statements. Okay, so I know I gave you a lot there, but let's quickly recap and streamline how to get service connected, because it is that important. Again, if you're currently transitioning through active duty and you were diagnosed on active duty, just write a personal statement, you're good to go. Boom, send it in. If you're a veteran and let's say you've been out for around 5 years or less and you have a diagnosis in service, just go ahead and get your diagnosis updated, because you don't want to show that, hey, yeah, I had documented back pain, but I haven't been to the doctor for it in ages. That's going to torpedo your claim, because the VA will say, hey, well, on paper you've healed, so what back pain? So make sure you get that diagnosis refreshed, and you might be able to go ahead and claim that, again, within that 5-year period without a Nexus letter. For my vets that have been out longer, I would recommend obtaining a Nexus letter. It's the best way to have the best maximum chance of winning, and that's all this is, right? Chances of winning. It maximizes your influence over the process by having that additional medical evidence backup, okay? And other than that, we just talked about the different jobs which could give you an edge by having sort of an implicit sort of bias as far as, yeah, we acknowledge that your back could get injured, because of course it could. Moving on, I hope that makes sense. Make sure to rewind this section if you need it, because it can make the difference. All right, let's talk about some fun stuff. And by the way, if you're getting value out of this video, do me a huge favor, hit the like button, sound off with your thoughts down below, and especially share this with someone who needs it, because so many vets are underrated or not rated at all for their service-connected back pain. Now, the compensation and pension exam is by far the most important day of your entire VA claim. This is why we have, a pre-CNP exam touch point with our clients. This is the reason why. We want to make sure that you're feeling confident and well equipped to go in there and execute on your CNP exam day. Now, this is very important. What you're looking at right now on your screen is called a goniometer. Now, this tool is something that the doctor is going to be using during your physical CNP exam. So this is the type of exam you would get for back, not tinnitus, not hearing loss, anything like that, obviously. You're going to sign a release form saying that you've made sure that your examiner is utilizing one of these. So make sure they are using one of these. What if they aren't? This happens all the time. You hear horror stories about CNP exams, and I wouldn't let that deter you or scare you too much. They're a lot better now than they were in recent memory, especially when the VA themselves conducted the exams. Now they're contracted out. If you get in there and the examiner is not using one of these goniometers, you could friendly say, hey, my last exam, even if you didn't have a last exam, hey, my last exam, they were using one of these tools to measure. Do you have one of those? You can kind of play dumb and do that. However, you could also sort of just feel it out. Some of the examiners, again, these are contractors. I hear the contracting company is making around $5,000 per exam. Typically, they're in a good mood. Typically, they're not out to get you. But if you feel it out and you feel like the examiner is pretty nice to you, maybe in a good mood, maybe you don't say anything at all, okay? Or maybe you bring it up gently. If they don't do it, hey, don't worry about it. However, you're definitely going to want to get the report hotline phone number after you exit your CNP exam. You can do that by going up to the front desk and say, hey, I was just looking for the report hotline number just in case for my next exam, just for my reference. That will be hugely important. So make sure that you're using one of these, because let's go into range of motion. They're going to take you through a number of different exercises, as we showed on the board here, a number of different, I shouldn't say exercises, a number of different sort of range of motion tests, right? Have you go forward and back, bend towards your toes. The simplest and most important of these is going to be the forward bend. This is measuring your flexion of your thoracolumbar spine. So picture just reaching down and touching toward your toes. This is everything for your back pain rating, besides what I'm about to give you right after when we get into radiculopathy. Now, when your examiner instructs you, hey, okay, that's great, go ahead and bend down and touch your toes. You need to stop and tell the examiner, okay, do you want me to stop when I feel sharp pain? This changes everything. It transforms the entire exam, and you are actually sort of playing dumb and taking control of the entire interaction. When you force the examiner to now be in that difficult position to where they're gonna have to tell you, yeah, push through your sharp pain, it doesn't really make sense, but oftentimes, about 80% of the time, they're gonna tell you, yeah, stop when you feel sharp pain. Makes sense, right? Now, all you can do is up to you. So when you go ahead and do that forward bend, the instructor, the examiner has told you to stop when you feel sharp pain. All you've got to do now is bend forward until you feel that pain, until you feel that discomfort. Or if you're having just the best day of your life, where you've gotten out of the C&P exam, or you're getting into the C&P exam, and guess what? You haven't hauled in groceries that morning because it's early in the morning. You haven't done your yard work. You haven't worked on your car. All the things that real life forces you to do, you haven't done because you're scheduled for your C&P exam. You might actually be better on the day of your C&P than every single other day in real life. So what do? You don't have to act, you don't have to show out. However, you want to show them what your real bad days look like. So you're gonna go bending forward, and whenever normally you feel that pain, go ahead and stop. You are not at an NFL combine. You're not trying out for a scholarship here. This is an examination for them to tell and see to the best of their ability, what does your real life look like for your back pain? You need to show your real life for your back pain, okay? That is the number one thing that I see vets go through, is they let the C&P examiner, some contractor, try to bully them into getting a lower rating for them and their families when their real life is suffering. So that's that. Decide when you're starting to feel pain and stop. Okay, halt when you feel pain, period. That goes with any physical examination during the VA disability process. Now, let's get into multiplying your VA rating for back while you're there at the C&P exam. Typically, it's right after the forward bend that your C&P examiner has a little checkbox on the form that they're filling out that indicates, hey, does this veteran have something called bilateral radiculopathy or neuropathy or sciatica? A couple of different words for it. If you're someone with back pain, most of us with back pain have experienced either, maybe a leg falling asleep, a foot falling asleep, or some shooting pain, some tingling, sort of pins and needles down one or both legs. This is so key to your VA rating that you should not overlook this. If this is you, if you've ever had those type of symptoms, you need to go ahead and express that, volunteer that information to the C&P examiner, okay? So that looks like, okay, I did the forward bend, I stopped when I felt pain, I'm not letting the examiner bully me, even if they put their hands on me and physically try to push me over, I might just fall forward because I'm not there to be in pain for a whole week because some contractor wanted to get tough with me, okay? That's just not how it's gonna go. After you stand up, I'm going to tell the examiner, hey, also, I have experienced numbness, tingling, and shooting pain down both sides of my lower extremities, down both legs. Of course, if that's the case for you. Now, this is going to do a couple of things. Bilateral radiculopathy, which means numbing, shooting pain, tingling in one or both legs, is actually a 20% rating for your left leg, a 20% rating for your right leg, plus a little bit of a multiplier for what's called the bilateral factor. Too nerdy, we're not going to get into that in this video. Just know it's a good rating, and many vets have the back pain, experience the neuropathy or the radiculopathy, or even have diagnosed sciatica and aren't compensated for it because they're not proactive during the C&P exam. Don't rely on the examiner to do their job to the best of their ability all the time. This is something that you need to know beforehand going in and volunteer that information. That could be a game changer. So, what is the rating? 10 and 10% for mild radiculopathy. So if you talk and the examiner interprets that as your radiculopathy being mild, very subjective, they're going to likely rate you at 10 plus 10% if you have it at both legs. However, moderate and severe, so even if it's just moderate, that is actually bumped up to a 20% rating per leg affected. So the key differentiator, I tell this to my clients, if you've ever had shooting pain with that radiculopathy, even if it was just a couple of times, if it doesn't have to be every day, you can say, yeah, I've had numbing, tingling, and shooting pain down one or down both legs. Typically, the shooting pain sends off a signal where that C&P examiner knows that, hey, you know what, this is not mild, this is probably moderate or severe. So those two words right there, shooting pain, can bump you up another 20+%. That's why this video is so important. All right, as we transition here to secondary conditions, again, like the video, share this with someone who needs it. I really appreciate you watching. This is going to be key because back pain, especially if you have degenerative disc disease, things like this, but back pain as a whole, think about it. Does your back pain really get better as you get older, or does it get worse? It usually gets worse, right? So the brilliance, and really it's real too, right? Your back pain, if you have a bad back, your back is basically connected to every extremity on your body, plus it's a huge mental factor as well. Your back pain having downstream effects can lead to secondary claims whereby your back is not seen as getting better with time. This is the pathway a lot of times, especially for my clients, where they get to the 100% rating, permanent and total territory, okay? Having the back be your center point and then having the real downstream effects, let's say a mental condition, or maybe your bad back causes your posture to be off. Now you have a bad neck, okay? All these things can plug in very easily. Maybe your bad back has led to weight gain because, of course it does. You can't really exercise as freely as you used to. And now that's led to obstructive sleep apnea. Now that's led to diabetes. Now that's led to different other things. These secondary claims founded, and attached to that back rating, which is seen as not getting better with time, really is a strong foundation for a permanent and total rating. So I'll just briefly touch on the most common condition as a result of back, and this is your mental conditions. Who jumps up and has a bad back in the morning and just says, yippee, I love it, ooh, nobody, right? A bad back is horrible. It kills your mood when you're trying to play with your kids, when you're trying to, do nice things for your significant other, bring in the groceries. It really is a buzzkill, and that's putting it lightly. So explore. If you are someone who's had, especially if you're tough, a lot of you veterans are so tough, tougher than I am, right? I'm an Air Force veteran. I'm not as tough as y'all. A lot of you veterans are so tough, and it's to the point where you have this back pain and you're carrying it, and it's just your baseline, it's just your normal, and you're really kind of covering things up as far as the mental side that, hey, this is making me grouchy. I'm a little bit shorter now. I kind of snap on my coworkers. These are things to get annotated and documented, because no one wants to admit, right, okay, I have this diagnosis, it sounds so mamby-pamby, what have you. But really, when you look at it, right, I use this metaphor all the time. You're a rental car when you are on, active duty service, when you are in your contract and serving the government on service, right? You're a rental car. You're being rented by the federal government. Whenever a rental car is scratched, dented, dinged, crashed, whoever is on the hook for that is the people who rented it. The government rented you, okay? That means any subsequent effects, they're absolutely on the hook for, and it's nothing personal. It's not taking a handout. It's just the agreement. It's just the nature of that agreement. So again, if you are dinged, absolutely go to the doctor and get checked out for your mental moods, which now have kind of decreased, maybe as a result and probably of your back pain. On average, mental claims secondary to back result on average in a 70% VA rating. And that's not including the rating for back. So an additional 70% VA rating, it's incredibly high value, and it should be because it's incredibly high impact to your life. So if that's you, if you've been diminished, if your household has been diminished by your back pain, make sure you try to get as much as possible in terms of you'll never get you back, right? Your household would much rather have you than that cash, but it's definitely our duty to try to fill that void as much as possible. Fellow vets, I really hope this helped you out. If it did, again, share this with someone who needs it. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.